Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Supreme Court has just delivered devastating news to the Democrats. But what if I told you that there's actually much more to this entire situation than initially meets the eye? Seriously, we have a lot to break down today, folks. Let's get right into it. First off, breaking news this morning. The U.S. Supreme Court has declared Louisiana's congressional map an unconstitutional racial gerrymander in a 6-3 opinion, where Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson have dissented. This is the massive 1965 Voting Rights Act determination that we've been waiting for. The constitutional legitimacy of all of the Democrats' beloved, racially gerrymandered voting districts. Guess what? This morning, they got shut down. In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court has narrowed Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, with their decision in Louisiana versus Calais, opening the door to sweeping redistricting changes across the South. That could erase up to 10 majority black seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, ultimately flipping them from blue over to red. Folks, this is what the Democrats have been doing for 60 years or more. You want to talk about what a racially gerrymandered voting district looks like? This is it. This is what the Democrats have been doing predominantly in the South, but really aggressively across the entire country. They have been artificially increasing the number of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives by drawing up district boundaries based on racial demographics, strategically clumping as many black and brown minority neighborhoods into a voting district as possible to artificially boost their representation. Guess what? Drawing up voting districts based on racial quotas is, as of today, officially unconstitutional. Now, all across the South, where most of these Democrat racially gerrymandered voting districts have existed for the last 60 to 65 years, all of them are set to get overturned in the very near future. This is the current map on the left. In the South, the Democrats hold 24 seats in these states. This is what is now on the horizon, thanks to this morning's Supreme Court bombshell. Under a possible redistricting scenario, the Democrats will very likely lose 12 seats, meaning the Republicans will gain 12 seats. By nature of dismantling all of these unconstitutional, racially gerrymandered voting districts the Democrats love so much. Now, folks, this entire situation is actually so bad, so catastrophic for the Democrats, that even CBS News this very morning has been forced to come to terms with reality. Not even they can deny it anymore. Take a listen to their report. The Supreme Court just issued a ruling on a potentially groundbreaking redistricting case that could impact, for many years to come, the power of minority voters in this country. It focuses on the constitutionality of Louisiana's congressional map and how it was redrawn. The justices determined whether Louisiana lawmakers properly balanced constitutional and Voting Rights Act protections. I want to get straight to CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford, who has been reading through the opinion. Jan, well, Major, we just got this ruling within the last couple of minutes. The justices, in a 6-3 vote, a decision written by Justice Samuel Alito for the other 5 conservatives, are striking down a second majority black district in Louisiana, ruling that state officials focused on race and that it amounted to an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. Now, this decision is a major one under the Voting Rights Act. It will go well beyond Louisiana. Based on what we're seeing so far, it will make it harder for state officials to draw up these so-called majority-minority districts. And it will also call into question about a dozen or so existing majority-minority districts, mostly in the South. Now, those districts, as you know, Major, have been a way for Democrats to pick up seats in some of those red states in the South. So this ruling is a win, I think we can say, for Republicans. But legally, this is a Supreme Court that, going back 20 years or more, has been saying, in a consistent line of cases, that the Constitution is colorblind. And that's why we've seen the Supreme Court do things like throw out affirmative action in college admissions. This line of cases is very consistent with the court's ruling today. What about the midterms? I think this ruling, coming today, 6 months after it was argued back in October, may come too late to have an impact on the upcoming midterm elections. I think the focus going forward will be on limiting states from considering race when they're consciously and intentionally drawing up districts to increase minority representation. That means you might not have as many of those oddly shaped districts, states with districts that zigzag like a Z, where, like this one, they went from Shreveport all the way down 250 miles to Baton Rouge, scooping up black voters along the way to reach a majority. So, I think that will restrict some of those districts for sure. Looking at this decision, it's 37 pages long. There is a dissent by liberal Justice Elena Kagan. That appears to be longer than the majority, and it looks like a barn burner. She is saying that today's ruling will gut the Voting Rights Act and will call into peril some of the accomplishments seen under that historic 1965 law, which really dismantled Jim Crow and systemic barriers to voting for Black people in the South. Of course, the Supreme Court today, as they have in recent decisions on voting rights, is saying the country has moved past that. It's time to stop intentionally focusing on race. As Chief Justice John Roberts said in a case back in 2007, the way to end discrimination based on race is to stop discriminating based on race. And let's read that quote here. Chief Justice John Roberts says this: "The way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race." And that is exactly what has just happened this very morning. And guess what? Much to absolutely no one's surprise, the Democrats are livid. They're all about race. They always have been. And now they are absolutely livid. In fact, we have a statement here from Justice Kagan. She says, "The clause's requirements have thus laid the groundwork for the largest reduction in minority representation since the era following Reconstruction. Look, just because you happen to not be white does not mean you get special representation. Black people, brown people, they don't get their own specially drawn voting districts anymore. We're all Americans. You want to get over race? You want to put racism behind us? Okay, this is what that looks like. What that looks like is no longer maintaining 24 or more voting districts across the entire country that are drawn up along racial lines. As a country, we are moving on. That's what's happening today. And the Democrats are melting down. But okay, now that the U.S. Supreme Court has deemed all of the Democrats' beloved racial gerrymandering unconstitutional, where do we go from here? Well, now we need to see the governors of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina bring their state legislators into a special session now to eliminate all of the Democrats' now unconstitutional, racially gerrymandered voting districts. And ladies and gentlemen, guess what? It's only been a couple of hours since the Supreme Court issued this opinion, and that's already what we're starting to see. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves has already given the order. Special session. Let's do it. We are redistricting now, before midterms. And in the other states mentioned, special sessions also appear to be on the near horizon. But you know what? I've got something else I want to show you. In the great state of Florida, the Sunshine State, the Florida House this morning has similarly passed their new congressional map, eliminating 4 Democrat-held seats that were, in many ways, similarly racially gerrymandered by the Democrats. Now it goes to the Florida Senate, which seems likely to pass it, at which point it'll arrive on Governor Ron DeSantis' desk, and we all know he's going to sign it. Folks, today is, like I said, pretty much absolute doomsday for the Democrats. But okay, while we are talking about redistricting, where do things currently stand with the Democrats' recent attempt to gerrymander the great state of Virginia? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have an update on that as well. The odds of Democrats winning 10 seats in their new Virginia redistricting plan have now fallen, in just the last week, from 80% all the way down to 50%. And the reason why is because this is now being deliberated before the Virginia State Supreme Court, where it seems likely to be ruled unconstitutional. Now, there's another important detail here. The deadline for the state of Virginia to certify and lock in this redistricting referendum is Tuesday, May 5th, just 6 days from now. That is to say, if this referendum has not been certified by that date, the entire thing gets tossed out altogether. And as we mentioned, the Virginia State Supreme Court is currently deliberating on whether it was even legal in the first place. Seems like it wasn't. So there's actually a chance the clock simply runs out on the certification timeline, a technical knockout of sorts. But either way, with all of this news today, Florida, the southern states, and the Supreme Court ruling gutting racial gerrymandering across the country. Folks, the Democrats are absolutely panicking. They know their entire game has been torched, and you know what that means? We are moving ahead with putting America first.